Hey y'all. Today we are talking about suicide, schizophrenia, coming out and living life now. Today I'll be talking to Gareth Stubbs, one of the Future Forward Hub's contributors, a beautiful human inside out. Admittedly, I've only gotten to know Gareth around the last 3 years or so, where I got to meet him in his stage where he'd done a lot of work on himself. His mindset, personality, character, and so much more. Now, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia at a young age, 15, 16 years, was born into a very abusive home with his father and mom's boyfriends. His mom was strict, but not abusive, just wanting her boy not to get into trouble. He struggled to make and keep friends, got involved with gangs, drugs, and drink. He taught himself how to cook, and by that I mean he cooks intuitively and very rarely cooks the same meal twice. He created a coloring book, a doodle book with mandalas and different exercises to help himself with his anxiety and depression. He got sucked into the world of personal development, which led him to become a grief counselor. Now, Gareth has mastered events in life that most would, never have the strength to master. We haven't been given that task to master, so it's just, in German, we say bewundernswert, so it's really admirable. Was it easy? No. Gareth has 7 different personalities that lives within his head. He has days where he has to lock himself up and away from his friends, family, and the world for fear of harming them with his anger and violence. He takes medication to assist his diagnosis and other ailments. Every single day is a struggle, a suffering. Yep, I got to meet Gareth in a stage where he had done a lot of work on and for himself. He captured my heart, a kindred spirit, a burning to desire to want to live life large and expansive, but at the same time breaking oneself down and resenting the life one has, not feeling worthy enough of it. The World Health Organizational global goals, in particular the 3rd goal of good health and well-being, aims to break the stigma on mental health and bring support to the table, but foremost speaking about it and, of course, doing something about it. I'm really pleased to have my friend and beautiful human being Gareth Stubbs with me here today on the Future Forward Hub podcast. He makes me happy, he makes me laugh, and he makes me feel good about myself. He's a good friend and listener. My intention for you today, listening, is to know that you're not alone. Mental health, depression, coming out, being bullied, being born into an unsupportive home, being surrounded by not so nice people, this totally sucks. But you are not alone. We are working together to break the stigma on this, all by conversing about it as honestly and openly as possible. So with that being said, let's dive in. So, hey Gareth.
Hi.
How are you?
Great, thanks.
We've just been having a conversation before, speaking about Dutch and clients and different languages and everything. Thank you so much for being here today. I was just saying to Gareth how I feel it's necessary. First I said compelled, and I was like, no, that's not it. But I feel it's necessary that we need to converse about a lot of things. And if anyone has lived it firsthand, certainly not me, but definitely Gareth. So I'm going to dive right in with a few questions to start a conversation. And the first being, I'd love for you to take us into your mind.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. And in your mind, tell us about the life of Gareth, about your recent experiences, is that it? Your recent coming out, how that was, the suicide thoughts, attempts, just what's it like in your mind? Share with us. I want to go into that maze.
If you have a box of Lego and you shake it and there's like so many different things, and then you empty it out on the floor and try and walk on it. That's it in a nutshell. Next question. No.
Oh my God.
What is the easiest way to describe it? When people ask me what it's like, I often say to them, if you imagine that you're kind of like a 5-year-old child and you're sitting on the floor playing with your toys, and all of a sudden, without any warning, the TV goes on There's nobody else in the room. There's no remote control. So you just say, okay, well, let the TV play in the background. And then all of a sudden, the radio goes on and it's playing loud music. You don't know how to switch it off. Then outside, you start hearing a car alarm go off. You hear arguing upstairs. Your mom walks in and starts shouting at you and says, why is the TV on and all that? But you're just sitting there playing on the floor. That's kind of like what happens sometimes is, in my mind, there are so many different noises. A lot of people in the past have said to me, well, just ignore them. As someone with schizophrenia, that's probably one of the worst things that you can say to someone, because we can't just ignore the voices. They're not the same as my voice. They have a different tone, they have a different energy behind them, and they're constant. And it's kind of like, if you hear a noise, your body is going to physiologically respond. So sometimes when you hear these voices in your head and you hear what they're saying and they go on and on and on, your body physiologically responds. So you're in a constant state of stress, not because you want to be, but because your body, if I take Gareth out of my body is physiologically responding to an event that's taking place. You have no control over some of the physiological responses in your body. You just have to roll with them. And that can be like, when things are difficult, that can be what it is like most of the time. And they just go on and on and on and on. The majority of them in the past have been very, very negative. So they're constantly putting you down and telling you negative things and things like that, which, when you want to live a normal life, and I'm going to use the word normal because someone with a mental health condition or someone with schizophrenia does not live a normal life, and that's not a negative thing. But when some people say to me, well, yeah, you're kind of normal, it's like, yeah, I appreciate that. I understand that. But I don't want to have can I swear? I don't want to have a fucking concert in my head all the time that I have no control over. So I want to be normal like you, who just argues with yourself. And sometimes, it's sad to say, in the past, it's got so overwhelming where I've just thought, well, what's the point? What is the point? I can't stop this. I don't know how to stop this. So as drastic as this sounds, I may as well not be here. And that's kind of like what it is like. I'm very fortunate that I've done a lot of work on myself so that I am able to manage it. Sometimes it can be difficult, and I just have to be very, very careful.
Now, you're talking about when you're arguing with yourself. Yeah, when it's having conversations with yourself. I'm just thinking, as a mom, like the way you described it, I'm just in the room. And there are 3 wild kids. I've got 3 kids. So
Yeah.
3 wild kids running around and screaming and arguing and chucking things. And the one looks like it's possessed. And the other one's gone into, I don't know what the hell. And the other one's biting things. And you just kind of like, they're all attached to me because they're my children.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's me that they're mirroring in some respect. I can use the terminology now. But back then, having this situation, that's kind of like what it felt. But an important thing that you said now was, for me, to make sense of it all, I was arguing with myself, like you said. I wasn't arguing with them, like this child, that child, that child. And I was trying to keep my sanity so I could control myself on how I responded to the situation.
Yeah.
How did you respond to the situations when 7 different personalities are going ape? Are they 7 personalities at the same time? And how did you control that?
Sometimes.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, that's a beautiful example. So, because I have 2 children, and sometimes as a parent in the past, teenagers can be teenagers. But as a parent, sometimes I can say, okay, right now, I'm not talking about this. I need to get my breath. I need to go outside and walk away.
Mm.
The difference is I can't go outside and walk away.
Mm.
So the kids are constantly going on and on and on and on. And sometimes it can be so overwhelming. Like I say, it can almost be like, you want to talk to yourself. I want to say to myself, Gareth, stay calm. This is not real. You don't have to believe them. But because it's so overwhelmingly loud, I almost can't hear my own voice.
Mm.
And then you think, well, you'll have that they can be quite sneaky. It's like, well, this is your voice. this is what you're saying to yourself. And you go, oh, okay, well, maybe it is. And you start to kind of like believe them almost. I have to be physically in good shape to be able to manage them properly. That's why I work so hard on my own personal health and well-being, and especially my mindset, so to speak. That's kind of like what it's like. So the healthier I am and the more rest I get, which is something that I work on, the easier it is to manage. Because the same thing, like how can I say it? No, I don't have to worry about sounding crazy.
No.
They hear things that I don't hear, if you know what I mean. So sometimes there'll be a conversation taking place that doesn't even involve me that they will be aware of. You know, I'll be having a conversation with you, and there can be, if let's say we're in a coffee shop and there's someone else over there, and then they start talking, and all of a sudden I'll start having a different conversation. That's what it's been like in the past. And then the person that I'm with is going, what's going on? We were talking about that. And I work with my business partner, who is also my best friend, who kind of like knows everything. And sometimes she says, I don't know how you can jump from subject to subject without forgetting what you're talking about. I don't either. But
I'm naturally talented. I've been given these beautiful gifts.
Yeah. So I see it now. I've worked to look at the positive, but I have to work hard.
Which most people don't. They like to take the road more traveled rather than less traveled.
They look for the quick fix.
Always. Yeah.
You know, one coaching, no disrespect to coaching. One coaching session is going to sort me out. I'm going to work on my limiting beliefs or my limiting decisions or reframing something. But you can do that to a certain extent, but it's kind of like not addressing the real issue. You know, so I have to address the real issue with them, and then I have to address my own real issues as well.
I'm going to go into a topic that was really close to my heart, especially last year. And I'm sure, 1,000% sure, that I'm not alone in this. I mean, I attempted suicide at 12, failed, clearly. I was speaking to one of my children, actually, all of them, and they're young and they're the same age I was at the time. And they were also like, I don't want to live this life anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa. And then I started asking myself, now, why would you want to commit suicide? Like just asking generally for myself. And you were talking about it now, is that the life that you're living isn't the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
So you'd rather end it than try and change it because of the road that's less traveled. It's just too much hard work.
Yeah.
And I'm a very positive person. Like I'm annoyingly positive. So much so that I push a lot of friends away because they'll come to me with something and I'll be like, we need to work on this and ideas and passion and purpose and everything. And then they'll be like, yeah, whatever. Just tell me life sucks rather than giving me solutions. And I started last year. It was even though I've got all this mindset, which I believe is we always fall into the slump of not believing in ourselves, not thinking that we're good enough, worthy enough, self-compassion and all that. Despite me having that mindset, I was still planning suicide. I was like, this is just not worth living.
Yeah.
Getting out, I don't know how the hell I got. I thought about it the other day, last week at a funeral. And I was like, I don't know how I got out of it. You've been in this place a lot of times. It's a horrible rabbit hole to be in. It doesn't matter even if you have the tools. How did you get out of it? Because I know it was last year, December, when on TikTok, you did a video where you were standing on a cliff or by the sea and you were saying, this is the place I was going to take my life. I was in tears. I couldn't stop crying. I was like, oh my God, I cannot imagine losing Gareth. And that was just me done. And that's when you came out as well for yourself.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing. We need to converse about that. Where were you? What was happening in your mind? How did you go from the here to where you are now? There's a big gap in between. How did you fill that gap? Do you know? Was it just, it happened?
No, it didn't just happen. I got to a point in my life. I journal every day because it's just something that I have done. And, you know, I was looking at my journaling. I can be very positive, like yourself. I can be very positive for other people. I'm always there for other people. But what I started to realize, kind of like with the lockdown, and I'm sure that for many people it happened, you're forced to sit with yourself and you're almost stripped of all these roles that you normally do. Like we lost our business. I gave my whole life to my business, everything that I had. And all of a sudden, I kind of like, there was nothing. And on top of that, I got the virus and I was ill, like very, very ill, like quite scarily ill, because it was even like a struggle to breathe. And I kind of like had to sit with myself. And what I started to do was I started to address my fears. Like it's easy for me to, and I'm using the word easy because it's just a word and there's no emotional attachment to it. It's easy for me to say, I don't believe in myself. It's easy for me to say, I'm not worth it. Because like you said, we all struggle with it. But the step that I took was I took it further and I started saying, well, why am I not worth it? What really is the issue? And what started to come up for me is that I started to kind of like acknowledge that, I'll just use the word maybe for now, that maybe I was gay. And it's something that I dealt with long, long ago, because I grew up in, like similar South Africa was back then, a very homophobic country. I was teased for being gay before I even knew what gay was. You know, when I was a little child, my father said to me, and I'll never forget it, you should have been a girl. I couldn't understand at the time. I was 4 or 5 years old. So I always knew that I was different, but I didn't know what gay was. And then when I tried a gay lifestyle, because there are a lot of, and this is no disrespect to gay people, it is my experience of it, there are a lot of gay people that are almost defined by their sexuality. And I didn't understand it because I wasn't like that. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a phase, and then it went away. But it started to come up recently, and it was like, because of all the pain that I had been through and all these voices was like, no, no, you can't say that. You're useless. You're this, you're that. It took me to the point where I was at that place and I just sat there and I thought, I'd rather be dead. Sounds crazy. I'd rather be dead than gay, because I didn't know how to come to terms with it. And I was so afraid of what people would think, and I was all that sort of stuff. So I sat there maybe for 6 or 7 hours, and I just went through all of my fears. And it kind of like all boiled down to that. I don't talk about my business in case people find out that I'm gay, because I didn't like myself for being gay. And then I sat there and I thought, well, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to say that I am gay. What would happen then? And again, I worked it down and I got to the point of, if I lost everybody because I came out, would it be worth living? And they started to get this kind of like little glimmer of hope. So I started to listen to other people's voices, not people that I have met, but people that I've maybe met online. And like I've said to you, your voice was one of them. And it's voices like that that said, okay, well, if I lose everybody that I have, maybe I can start again with a clean slate. And I just sat there and I thought, okay, I'm going to give it one last shot. If it doesn't work out, at least I have my personal option. So that was kind of like the turning point for me. And from that day, I started to kind of like work on everything, not from a positive point of view. And this might sound silly, not from a positive point of view, but from a negative point of view. Okay, so why do I think I'm ugly? Why do I think I'm stupid? What labels am I giving myself? What expectations am I trying to kind of like fulfill as a result of that label? Who am I without those labels? And it was hard work. I like to draw diagrams that are easy to kind of like fill in. And it got to the point where I thought, you know what? I'm going to use words. They're my words. They're not derogatory. Who cares if I'm a homosexual? If they don't love me for who I am, then they're not worth having. If they love me for what I am, then they're not worth having either. Because if someone loves me for what I am, they don't love me for me. They love me for what I do. They're like, oh, Gareth is a great coach. Gareth is a great therapist. Gareth is a great cook. And when you have those labels, you're constantly trying to wear those hats all the time, that you don't realize that you're trying to be those things all the time. Whereas when you kind of like detach yourself from those labels and you come to terms with who you are as an individual, you're more aware of opportunities where I can be a therapist. I don't have to be a therapist all the time. Where I can be a chef, I don't have to be thinking about food all the time. And that's what kind of like gave me the courage to kind of like say, this is me, this is who I am, these are my labels. I'm not defined by my sexuality. Who gives a shit if I like men? Because I sure as hell don't. I find them fucking attractive, and I'm not going to deny myself that right in my life. And there was one line or one situation that really helped me. Because of everything that happened, we lost our business. I had to swallow my pride and turn to social services for support. And as a result, after being in hospital, like I had a bit of a breakdown after that. So I went to the emergency rooms. I didn't tell them the full story because the mental health situation here in Spain is quite archaic. But I just said, you know, I'm really, really struggling. I have a lot of stress. As a result, I got a Spanish therapist. And there were two things she said to me. She said to me, biology makes no mistakes.
Ooh, goosebumps.
And I just burst out crying when she said that, because I thought I was a mistake for being gay. And when she said that, it kind of like really was quite a profound thing. And another thing she said, and it's one that I constantly use now, we were talking about language before we started this. In Spain, the only time you say I am is when you say your name. So you say, yo soy Gareth. That means I am Gareth. But in English, we then go on to say, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm sad. In Spanish, you don't say that. You then say, yo estoy triste, yo estoy feliz, which directly means I feel happy. So you're not constantly labeling yourself like we are in English. And the language that we use is so subtle. And those two things kind of like really transformed it. Like, yes, I can say, yo soy gay, because that's who I am. But it doesn't define me. It's the same like my name, yo soy Gareth. Yes, that's who I am. But then I can say, you know, I'm creative or I am good at cooking. I don't say yo soy creativo because I am not creative. I feel creative. And those two things kind of like really, really helped me and got me to the point where I thought, well, yeah, I'm just going to tell people that I care about. And that's kind of like that's a long-winded fucking answer, isn't it? But there is like, that's the thing about this kind of thing. People go on the internet and they look for a short answer or a short solution to get over suicidal thoughts. There's no short solution. I wish that there was, but that was the steps that I took. Was the biggest part was working on the negative and giving myself permission to work on the negative, to see what was really, really going on behind it, to kind of like chunk it down rather than saying, I can say I'm not good enough. And then if I went to a coach or a traditional therapist, they say, yes, you are. Let's just reframe that. But reframing is temporary as far as I'm concerned. It's a good thing, but it's also temporary. When you get to the core of the issue, we all just want to be ourselves, but we're afraid to be. So then we get defined by what we do. Because if I say to myself, I'm good enough, I have a set of subconscious expectations to fulfill to be good enough. If I don't realize what those subconscious expectations are, I'll never be good enough. So if I say to myself, why am I not good enough? Why am I not good enough? I can start to uncover the subconscious expectations. And that was what it was for me. Kept answering it and asking it and asking it. And eventually I got to the point where it was, I am gay. And it's like, oh, fuck. I don't want to be. So let me say that, I'm not good enough. It's easier to say that than acknowledge my truth.
Mm.
And it'll be the same for all of us. I'm not saying that everybody's gay.
Well, you can feel gay. You can be gay.
We can, darling, we can.
It's absolutely beautiful. That's so funny because whilst you were talking, because I said at the beginning of the question, I don't know how I got out of my thing. I just started going on walks and taking audiobooks. Whilst you were talking, I was always the positive for everyone to show them the positivity, but the negative was for me.
Yes.
Every time I tell them something positive, I would think the negative of myself. So I had to give myself permission to be joyous, to be gay, to be happy without the expectations, and to actually just be it and not attach anything to it. That was fucking hard. That was fucking hard. It's like 46 years down the line. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
Why do you choose to keep fighting? Why do you choose to stay alive?
There's two reasons. My number one reason is if I have this, that means one less person in the world has it. If I go, that means another person gets it. And I know that sounds silly, but that's one of it. And the second one is like, why not? Let me just see if I can get through today. And once I've got through today, let me see what tomorrow brings. And like I say, in the back of my mind, I have that option, but I'm just going to see how today is. And if today is a complete and utter fucked up mess, I have an option. And that sounds silly, but I cannot stop the suicidal voices, but they know that I have an option. And what I start to do sometimes is like, I'll say, well, if you're so fucking clever, or if you're so fucking strong, you go out there and jump off a cliff. Or you go to the pharmacy and buy some more fucking tablets. I'm not doing all your hard work for you. And that kind of like it shuts them up a little bit.
Wow.
If they say hurt yourself, it's like, well, you go and fucking pick up the knife then. Because I'm sitting here quite comfortable, thank you. And you're fucking opening your big mouth. So you go and get the knife. They kind of like just sit there. And it's the same with my thoughts. It's like, okay, well, if you say things are stupid, well, you believe it. I'm not going to for now. So that's kind of like why. And every day I get through, I'm so lucky because a few other people didn't. And I want to find my voice to share more about this. I'm a lot more comfortable now sharing about it because finally I've got to what my real issue is. So who cares? Who cares if I'm a fucking homo? Who cares if I like men? But I've realized that that's what I was covering up.
It's amazing. It's amazing what we cover up. And what I love is that you said that you have an option. I've been conditioned to use the word and had a lot of attachment that I have a choice. But actually, I don't have a choice. It's an option. And how I respond to that is the actual result of the choice that I've made. So I love that you used that word as well. My best friend and I agree on a lot of things, and there's very little that we don't agree on. And one of the things we don't agree on is we don't have to agree on it. It's great having different opinions. Is that everything happens for a reason. She hates that saying, hates it. And I'm like, it's true though. Everything does happen for a reason. Because I see it for myself. I don't quite know what the reason is right now. I don't even know if the word is reason. But how do you feel about that? How do you see that everything that you've gone through has a reason or a purpose?
I agree with it 100%. Like I used to use the word everything happens for a reason. But for me, reason means that I've done something. But when I say to myself, everything that happens around me has a purpose, then I can learn from it. So I look back at my life. If I used to say to myself, well, there's a reason why I was abused. It's like, oh, well, was it something that I did and all that sort of stuff? But for what purpose was I abused? To make me stronger. to make me a voice, to make me learn more things about myself. I have very strong spiritual beliefs. And one thing that really drives me is I chose this life. And when I started to truly acknowledge that, it's like, okay, well, when shit happens, it's like, okay, I chose this. I signed up for this. I may not like it, but how can I make the most of it? And that's what I firmly believe. Yes, everything happens for a reason. Everything that goes on in my life has a purpose. I sometimes feel that people don't like it because they don't want to learn from negative things. There is the harsh reality of life is that there's more negative than positive.
Or people don't like to learn from or want to hear the negative unless there's been some highly successful happening after all of that, like rags to riches or something to that effect.
Absolutely. I said to my business partner the one day, because he's a very good reframer and very positive. I said, well, why are you never negative? Like, because, there's no point in being negative. I said, well, then why do batteries work if they've got a positive and a negative? Battery would be fucked if it had two positives. And you've got to embrace your negative because it's just as powerful as your positive. Mm-hmm. And when you acknowledge that my life has negative connotations, but it also has positive connotations, it starts to work better. Yeah. But sometimes we try and make the battery have two negatives for ourselves. And then we try and make other people's batteries, like what we were talking about, we try and make other people's batteries have two positives. But a battery has to have positives and negatives.
So true.
So, yeah, purpose, reason, negative, positive. In this therapy world, we're taught that there's no right and there's no such thing as right or wrong. There's no such thing as try. There is. In order to do something, you have to try it. Sometimes you fail. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you do right things. Sometimes you do wrong things. Sometimes you do good things. Sometimes you do bad things. But we're almost taught to not face the negative. I'm not saying that we should be negative all the time, but sometimes we just have to embrace it.
So it's been a lot of negative talk with positivity. Thank you so much, Gareth. I think your voice is very important. One of my last questions, they're not even a questions, it's more a statement that when I was preparing for the interview, I was like, or just this episode, not interview, it was just episode. You need to start writing that book, Gareth.
Since I've come to terms with things, I've given myself a break just so that I can allow everything to settle. But the structure is coming. And like I say, with all the processes that I've done on myself, I've drawn loads of diagrams and that sort of stuff. I feel that there is a structure in those diagrams because one of the most amazing things that's happened is my business partner came to me and said, I've seen how happy you are. Can you take me through the process? And that was the purpose of the pain for me. If there's one person in my life that means a lot to me, it's him. And kind of like I said, everything has a purpose. So the fact that someone who knows me so well can see the change in me and has asked to go through the process kind of has reinforced that this is the right structure for the book. So it's not going to be a normal book because it'll be a mix of conversations. And I like books that you can kind of fill in. And I don't know if you've ever seen these books by Kerry Smith.
Wreck This Journal. Now I've got something else called Burn After Writing.
Yeah, and there's another one called Don't Eat This Book. Yeah, so it's going to be something like that, a combination. So
I love it, Gareth. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
You make me happy. You make me happy. You bring me happiness. You bring me joy. It's always so good to speak to you. It's always so good to observe you, whether it's on TikTok and you're doing your videos and you're walking with your dog or whatever it is, or I read your posts on Facebook where I'm like, damn, they just came at the right time again. Thank you so, so much. I can't wait. I really cannot wait until I can get on over there, Espanol, come and hug the shit out of you because we both huggers.
That'll be messy.
It will, won't it? It'll just be like, I love you.
It'll be rainbow shit, darling.
Unicorn fluff balls.
All right.
Thank you so, so much. I love you
Yeah.
lots.
And I love you too. And I'll
Okay,
speak to you
darling.
soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Yoo-hoo! Thank you for listening to this episode. If you really enjoyed this podcast, why don't you subscribe? Hop on over to futureforwardhub.com and sign up for the newsletter. I would love to keep in contact with you about new episode releases and, of course, the live Future Forward Hub events. And, by the way, if you have a burning topic that you want to converse about, apply on futureforwardhub.com/podcast, scroll to the bottom of the page and apply to be on the podcast. And you know what would be really appreciative? Subscribing on your favorite listening platform and leaving us a review. Let us know how we are doing. This means the world to us. And until the next episode, thank you for being a part of the community. I love you. Mwah.